The international, yes. Building global capacity in a time of change. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we're meeting today here in Sydney. We're on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today. So this is the inaugural distributed hub conference model for the International Social Pharmacy Workshop. So good evening to all of the people in Sydney. You can clap. Where it's 10 p.m. at night. Good afternoon to the people in Basel, Switzerland, and good morning, a very good morning to the people in Chicago. Over the past 4 years, we've experienced really significant local and global changes. In the year 2020, when we were supposed to host this conference, Sydney and in fact the whole eastern seaboard in Australia was threatened by bushfires. But the bushfires didn't stop our conference. COVID stopped our conference. Earlier on this year, we weren't threatened by bushfires. International travel was opened up. However, over the last couple of weeks and months, the eastern seaboard has been threatened by various floods. And of course, globally, there have been a number of significant challenges as well, leading to financial pressures and other. So a very big thank you to friends and colleagues for being so patient, waiting from 2018 to 2022. Many thanks to all of our sponsors, to Expert Events and the organising committee. So I would like to thank in particular all of the members of the organising committee. So we have co-chair Dr. Carl Schneider, we have Sarira, Artie, Beck, Irene, Niall, and our international organising committee members as well, Beth, John, Raiden and Isabel. Thank you very much. Of course, we couldn't hold a conference like this without significant sponsors. And the sponsors I like to acknowledge on this slide here. So the major sponsor for the Sydney Hub has been MediAdvice, and we've had a really lovely evening earlier on today, sponsored by MediAdvice. We have major sponsors, Research in Social and Administrative Pharmacy. Of course, the key journal for our field, our discipline, Exploratory Research in Clinical and Social Pharmacy, a relatively new journal. We've also had sponsorship from the Council of Pharmacy Schools of Australia, from Roche, from Desitin, from MSD. The Australian Pharmacy Council has sponsored our student prize for the conference, and we also have sponsorship from the Pharmacy Guild of Australia. I've got a short message to play here from Alida Chen in respect of the RSAP sponsorship.
Hello, my name is Alida Chen, and on behalf of Shane Sell and the other editors and associate editors in RSAP, Research in Social Administrative Pharmacy, we are pleased to be a sponsor of ISPW. Hope you have a great conference, and don't forget to check out our articles in RSAP, contribute an article yourself maybe, become a peer reviewer, and check out our new textbook, Contemporary Research Methods in Pharmacy and Health Services.
Thank you, Alida. So it's been a really significant challenge, but we are here despite the bushfires in 2020, the floods in 2022, the COVID-19 pandemic, global uncertainty, financial pressures, and many other considerations. And in advance, I'd like to thank you for for your patience, for being patient with us, and with the use of technology and the model that we're trialing for this particular conference. We've not actually done this before. We've planned as much as possible. We're hoping things go smoothly, but we may not have thought of everything. So just be patient with us. And I'd like to pass over to Dr. Carl Schneider, co-chair. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you so much for everybody online and in person here. I'm just going to check the chat. Okay, fantastic. So as Tim mentioned, this is a distributed hub concept. So what we have here is 3 hubs. The Australian hub at the University of Sydney, and in the background in that picture there, you can see our wonderful main quadrangle with the cloisters down below. We also have a United States hub in Chicago in the Big Ten Conference Center, as well as we have a Swiss hub in Basel at the Biocentrum University of Basel. So while we were being innovative, we're not unique. In fact, what we see here is that there is some talk in Nature, for instance, that there is an analysis of ways to decarbonize conference travel post-COVID-19. So we have here where a society has got together to identify the actual carbon credits that they were consuming as opposed when they're attending conferences internationally, and they looked at what they could be saving in terms of carbon credits if they would be able to shrink the footprint, whether they could do it purely face-to-face in one section, a distributed model such as ours, or indeed completely virtual. Now, as many of you may recall, we conducted a survey of people that had previously attended ISPWs or expressed interest in attending Sydney, and the vast majority provided a united voice that we wanted to attend face-to-face. And thus our distributed hub model was born. So we have similarly another article, a multiple hub academic conference, global, inclusive, culturally diverse, creative and sustainable. And in future, this might be a mechanism by which, in particular, participants from developing countries may be able to participate more so in academic affairs. So our logistics for the next 4 days is, you may have heard me at the registration desk. When you pick up your name badge, you get to choose your own adventure with the traffic light system stickers. That's also, I believe, in Chicago, and in, I believe it's in Basel as well. Green means please give me lots of hugs. Amber means you can be close, but you don't need to hug me. And red means I would like to maintain social distancing. In terms of catering, we've had marvelous sponsorship by the sponsors that Tim mentioned. We've got a mix of sponsorship and BYO. Please come and say hi if there's anything you need. Myself, Tim, Isabel, Beth, John, and indeed the teams are there to help you out if there's anything that is a little bit confusing, because let's face it, this is a new model. In terms of connecting, we're doing this via Zoom links. I'm telling people that are already on Zoom, so you probably know how to do that. There's also a private YouTube, which we put up all our posters, and please put comments below if there's any questions you want to ask about those posters, and the authors can review that and provide their answers to your comments. If you are on Twitter, our hashtag is ISPW 2022, no spaces. And just a reminder, we're going to be having standard and advanced level, and I think there's a super advanced level 4 sessions statistical workshop. So that's going to be truly exciting. So special request, please send any photos or stories for the closing presentation to surira.elden@Sydney, spelt with NEY, or Timothy Chen at sydney.edu.au. A couple more things on logistics. Our common room, which we had our welcome drinks, is adjacent to PLT. The facilities are behind PLT. The alarm has a two-tone, just in case. There's a low tone and a high tone. You only need to evacuate on the high tone, and that's meeting places across Science Road. There are a couple of gaps in the program, and that is somewhat by design. Please explore the campus, re-establish those networks that you can do that face-to-face, because it's been 4 years since ISPW has been held. Please go and see our lovely quadrangle, the Child Track Wing Museum, say hi to some of the mummies. And you can always go down to Broadway to have a look at our closest shopping centre, and that's just across the park. So the campus itself is a mixture of old and new. You saw the quadrangle, but we have some fantastic new buildings, such as Susan Waker, which you might come across on Thursday, Charles Perkins Centre, and you may even see how old pharmacy is. You might even see some interesting motifs on our main quadrangle. So whilst we prepare for our opening plenary in 3 minutes, we would like to encourage all of the people that are here, that are interested perhaps in hosting another ISPW in 2 years' time. It's a fantastic, wonderful, and truly collaborative. I thoroughly appreciate being part of this. It's truly a family. Please consider whether you'd be willing to host in 2024. And we'll go through some presentations of some of our past events. Before we do that, sorry, there'll be the keep of the bell. We should open the conference with the bell. Not tonight. You're not going to connect from your room? Okay. Have fun, make new scientific collaborations, help create new knowledge and skills, meet colleagues and friends. But most importantly, we get to meet and socialise with one another. So I think this is on timing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And now I'd like to hand over to Beth Martin to introduce our opening plenary speaker, Professor Jon Schommer. So over to you, Beth, and John in Chicago, please.
Good morning, Chicago. Good afternoon, Basel, and good evening, Sydney. So let's do a sound check and make sure that we're connecting okay. I'm Jon Schommer from the University of Minnesota, and you should be seeing a slide deck that says the first 100 years of social pharmacy. We're halfway there. Everything looks good, loud and clear. All right. Well, thank you for being here. It has been 4 years. The pictures that the Sydney Hub just showed are fabulous because you get to see the perspective from their camera. I'm going to take you back to the very first social pharmacy workshop, Helsinki, Finland, 2 days in August, 1980, 18 participants from 6 countries. And they gathered together in 1980 to talk about concepts of social pharmacy and their teaching programs and research. And I found out about this, this meeting, not on the internet, because they didn't have that internet thing to post all these pictures and, and tweet about it. I went to the Journal of Social and Administrative Pharmacy. 1984, it was volume number 2. So after the 1980 conference, the journal was started 3 years later. Lars Einar Frykloff was the editor-in-chief, and Dr. Frykloff was trained as a pharmaceutics scientist. And at this meeting, I found out yesterday at the registration table, we have a pharmaceutics scientist amongst us. So that tradition goes on. But he saw, he was from Sweden, he saw the potential of what we call social pharmacy. He goes, I want to put some logs on this fire and make it burn bright. And he started a journal. He was editor-in-chief for a couple of decades, a great advocate. He would attend the social pharmacy conferences, or workshops as they were called back then. And so every 2 years, you can go back to these journals and read. And it was through the lens of the editor-in-chief, Dr. Frykloff. And it's beautifully written. There's pictures that I'll show in a second, black and white, of course, but just unbelievable. I think what was going on, and here's my spin on it. Now, I'll open up some time, maybe 5 minutes at the end for you to tell me I'm wrong or to make a comment for some historical evidence. Betty Tuning already told me here in the Chicago hub that there's an originator in 1980 who said, I want it to be a fun group, a social group, a group that shares ideas without judgment. We're going to be totally constructive and critical, but without judgment. And here we are. It's a dream that has come true almost 50 years later. I think what was going on in the profession of pharmacy was, if you look at the circle on the slide, that's the big circle, I'm going to say that's the health care system. And if you look at the small circle, that's pharmacy. We're kind of outside the healthcare system. This is before 1965. We provide product. You know, and at that time we were going from, you know, kind of the tinctures and potions to solid dosage forms. So we made sure it was not adulterated, not misbranded, labeled correctly, et cetera. And so we contributed to the healthcare system up until 1965, a 25-year period in providing product. In the United States, it was unethical up until 65 to discuss the therapeutic purpose of a pharmaceutical. When those questions arose, we were instructed as professionals, I guess, pharmacists, to have the patient talk to the prescribing physician. Well, things changed. I think the next 25-year period could be called the information era or the clinical pharmacist era, where we started drug information centers. All of a sudden, it's like, well, how do I dose aminoglycosides in a burn patient? I'm going to call the pharmacist. What about drug-drug interactions, side effects, contraindications? We started being recognized. I'm adding another little circle where the healthcare system would reach out to us, call the drug information center, call the pharmacist, ask the question, we calculate the dose, we get the information, and bring it back. It was during this time that Don Brody was talking about the drug use control process. There's a lot of things going on. Pharmacists were elevated in status. I think those 18 pioneers said, we've got something here. It's not just the natural sciences, not just the clinical sciences, but the social sciences have a place. And they would come together, and as you read the proceedings, they would struggle. They would sit there for hours drinking coffee and other beverages in the beautiful fjords of Norway, struggling, just struggling. Actually, it was very serious. They were very beautiful places, but they were very serious about how can we make this happen. Again, I would propose it followed a typical organizational life cycle. You start the first 5 years in an organization and you talk about the other and not the us. You don't say what's in it for us. You say we see something in society, in healthcare, in pharmacy that we can contribute to. Let's get together, a small group, and talk about the other. It takes about 5 years. That's what happened. They were talking in the 70s. Then finally they said, okay, in the next few years, let's start putting some organization to this. And so years 6 to 20 in an organizational life cycle is like, let's have a clearly defined leadership. Let's, instill some DNA into our organization, and let's get some processes and procedures. Maybe we should have a bell that goes around from both sides. All these beautiful traditions are started by the pioneers. And I think we followed that cycle. And then you get years 20, 30, 40, 50. How do we assimilate and welcome others into this organization? And that happened because here, based on my extensive research in the dusty stacks of the University of Minnesota, pulling out these old Journal of Social Administrative Pharmacy journals, I have determined that 18 people started in Finland, but then it went to the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Czechoslovakia, as it was called back then, Norway, UK, Germany, USA, and Belgium. And it grew. The blue bars show that it went from 18 people to over 100 people, and then 150, and approaching 200 in the subsequent years. The number of countries represented went from 6 to 8. I think it was 17 or 18. And then all of a sudden, in 1996, Bonnie Svarstedt and Janine Mount from UW, University of Wisconsin-Madison campus said, we'll host in the United States for the first time. And people were willing to fly into Madison, Wisconsin, and come. Well, have you been to the international airport in Madison? All of my degrees are from Wisconsin. So. I'm Wisconsin. But it grew, it developed, it matured. It went from a toddler to a teenager, sometimes rebellious, into a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old. And here we are now growing. Again, I was looking at the Journal of Social Administrative Pharmacy, and I took some shots of the reports. And here's a colleague using an overhead projector, talking about pharmacy manpower. Yeah, we call it workforce research now, which I think will change that name soon. But just incredible. Here's a group on a boat on the River Spree, I believe it's Berlin, Germany, having a delightful evening on the water, talking, sharing ideas, etc. This one I love because I thought, what is this space? It's the University of Humboldt in Germany. So what is this space? So I got on the internet and looked it up. Apparently in this room, incredible things have happened. Scholars, Pulitzer Prize winners, senators, and people have come to discuss things. So we rented this space, and you look in the very back, and there's our poster papers. And if you go on the internet, I think those pictures are still hanging in the same places, even to this day, 30 years later. It just inspires you. Here's some fjords in Norway and some people taking a coffee break with white snow-capped mountains behind them. I want to go there and be with them. I want to have coffee with them. There's some great things going on. And the same things are happening now in 2022. And we just happen to be doing it in Chicago and Basel and Sydney. Now, I was really touched by Dr. Freikloff as editor-in-chief. He, every 2 years, would take pictures, took notes. He would write up pretty sophisticated summaries of ISPW meetings. And they were getting into a rhythm. And as often happens in an organizational life cycle, before I go into that, you know you've arrived. You know you've arrived when somebody from outside your discipline, in this case, statistics, takes the time to write an article, submits it to your journal, and criticizes you. That was good. And we accepted it gladly, saying we want constructive criticism. And this article is all about the problem of non-response bias. And back when this was written, in the 1980s, we did a lot of survey research, and sometimes we would report findings that were probably statistically weak because of non-response bias. We didn't account for it. Well, I'm happy to say that we received this article. It was a well-written article by a statistician. It was really, really solid. And I'm going to pick on my colleague right here, Dr. Caroline Gaither here in the Chicago Hub. You know, 5 years later, you're reading research that she's publishing with a colleague out of Purdue University. Response rate of 66%. They assessed non-response bias, accounted for it, and then also used covariant structure modeling, confirmatory factor analysis to control for other confounding. We wanted to grow, we wanted to mature, we wanted to get better. And I would say that that's part of our DNA, because some of you are going to sit through like 150 hours worth of statistical. I think John Hadley's going to stay in Chicago for like the next 2 months. 6 hours in a workshop, and we just absorb it. And what's really nice is that it's going to be recorded, and we can watch it. If we're at a different workshop, we can watch it. So we're always striving to get better. So back to Dr. Freikloff, the editor-in-chief. There he is, sitting right between Bonnie Sparstead and Janine Mount. And he's taking notes, taking pictures. He's thinking about how I'm going to summarize this conference that I believe this one was hosted at UW-Madison in the USA. How do I write this up? Because people like myself really benefit from reading his perspectives. Well, sadly, like in many organizations, somebody retires or moves on to a different job, but he passed away in 1999, kind of unexpectedly, and it was a great loss. So there's an article written by Albert Wertheimer about very touching tribute. And I must say that not all of you will know who I'm talking about, but some of us are mourning the loss of Dr. Mickey Smith, who's from the University of Mississippi, who has been in our discipline for decades. He started in the 1960s, and he passed away at age 82. 83 years old, he passed away. So when you start saying goodbye to people, 4 years later, in 2003, JSAP announced that they were closing the pages of the journal. There's some economic downturns, and the Swedish Pharmaceutical Products Press said we just need to close the pages. Gladly, 2 years later, a large publishing company called Elsevier saw value, and they said, you know, we've had our eye on you, and we would love to support not JSAP, but now it's RSAP. It went from a red journal to a green journal. Research in social administrative pharmacy is well respected. It continues the legacy of sharing ideas. And so we're very familiar with this journal, very grateful for it. And there's other many strong journals in our discipline, many that we can be thankful for. So what was happening in pharmacy practice? Well, you've got the circle of product coming in, you've got the arrow going out, reaching out for information. I've added a third circle now. It's a circle that straddles the big circle, healthcare, a little bit in healthcare, a little bit out. I would call that these practice models that were being developed in 1991 to 2015, another 25 years. I call it the pharmaceutical care era. It's the practice model era. We know pharmaceuticals, we know information about pharmaceuticals, and guess what? We have a practice model called pharmaceutical care. Good for us, we're growing, we're developing, and what happened? Oh my goodness, ISPW meetings focused on that. How do we build, how do we do implementation and evaluation science? How do we build our practice model? How do we build business models and understand the patient's needs, et cetera? So here we are, 2000 in Finland, 2002, 20 years ago, Australia hosted. It was a great meeting. Chen looked exactly the same 20 years ago as he does now. Went to Malta, UK, New Zealand, Portugal, Thailand, USA, Scotland, and Belgium. And we saw some beautiful pictures from those meetings. And then so here we are today, kicking off ISPW 2022 with a theme, building global capacity in a time of change. We started adding themes. You can look at the right-hand side there about the themes, and it's really telling about how we're expanding into public health, understanding consumers, engaging across professions. I do want to highlight, I put an asterisk on social pharmacy and pharmacy education. I want to remind the delegates here, many of us were in Leuven, Belgium, and at the closing delegate ceremony, we passed a resolution that really said we need to advocate for social pharmacy in our curricula, not just to keep it, but to develop it and expand it. And that really stuck with me. At the time I thought, oh, big deal. It's a statement. Oh no, I was wrong. By 2020, it was published in the International Journal of Pharmacy Practice. And now in 2022, 4 years later, it's impacting myself and I hope you, saying, I see what we were talking about because we're going through curricular change. And guess what? I'm biased, of course, but I think we are in the center of what's going on in pharmacy practice right now. And that's why I think we're in a new era, another 25 years, 2016 to 2040. Not to say that the product era and the information era and the pharmaceutical care era are gone. No, they're established. But we keep moving forward, and I'm going to call it the medication experience or the patient care era, where, and recently it's not just an individual patient, it's whole communities of patients, which I'll point out in just a second. We're in the middle of healthcare because almost all healthcare relies on medications. And what are our patients, what are our communities talking about? The medications they're taking. Some of us went out for dinner and we told Jessica we would talk about her at an international conference. She was in tears, sharing part of her life story. And I won't get into it, but part of it was, she's a server, at this restaurant, and she just opened up to us, and she told us about a malady that she has, lupus, and all the drugs she's taking. And when she found out we were in healthcare, she just opened up and it just gushed out. This is in the center of people's lives. She said they're spending $1,300 a month on medication. So, okay, I'm not going to say the restaurant so you can't identify it. It's anonymous. Okay, good. So as I learn and listen to people, as I was going through our JSAP journals, I found lists of the delegates that would attend. So I reached out, I looked for email addresses and I reached out, and some had valid email email addresses, and they wrote back, said, the one in Finland, the sauna, that was the best one. Wow, this is good. They were telling me stories about such great things, but also I listened and I learned intradisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary work is more important than ever. And each one of these has a definition. So we are recognized and we are beginning to be asked to join broader perspectives, whether it's public health, medicine, social work, et cetera, policy. The other thing I heard was the greatness of global sabbaticals. Inez Kratz from Sydney traveled to UW, Madison International Airport back in '96. Sorry, I'm a Scotty. I got to pick on Wisconsin. And she said, you know, rather than just being here for the ISPW conference, I'm going to stay for a whole semester. And Bonnie Sparstead said, let's work together. And they spoke fondly this spring with me about the advances of their research and how much they enjoyed it and how they built a lifelong relationship over the years. And it was really heartwarming. So the connections that we make here are so very vital. And we still do that. And then the domains, I won't read them all, but there's a lot of domains that people are telling me about that we should be paying attention to. And a lot of them are not clinically oriented. You know, big data, informatics, artificial intelligence, cost, culture, housing, food security, social isolation, transportation. All of a sudden, we're being recognized not just in healthcare, but in society overall. And that's something that I've been, you know, if you talk to my colleague Caroline Gaither, I talk to her a lot about this. She's like, gee, Sholmes, can we talk about something else? And it's been on my mind for quite some time now about how we're expanding. I used to think of our discipline as part of translational research. You got T0 research, where it's people in laboratories just seeing if they can learn something new. T1 translational research is, could we develop this for human use? Okay. T2, can we take it into real patients? T3 translational research is what about implementing it into practice? And then finally, T4 is translation into communities of people. And I always thought, yeah, you know, we go from bench to bedside, bedside to best practice, and then best practice to best outcome, best value, best, you know, fill in the blank. And I always thought we're the blue circle. But what I'm realizing is that we're getting drawn into T0, T1, and T3 more and more. And I'm finding this, and I know a lot of us here are very passionate about our curricula in our training programs. I'm experiencing firsthand of talking about social pharmacy issues in basic natural science classes. And we were integrating this on purpose to show students that what you're learning in medicinal chemistry or pharmaceutics is going to be very valuable to you as a practitioner. And we're going to bring in Jon Schommer, or a professor from the social sciences, to tell you, do a whole lecture to tie that in. And it's been really successful, where you open up the eyes of students. And then later on, when we're teaching them down the road, they'll say, oh yes, I know a principle from medicinal chemistry that I can use in talking with this actual patient. And it's been very good. So I'm realizing that we might be spreading more than just T3 and T4 translational research. I'm keeping an eye on the earlier phases. And so I'm at a college of pharmacy. I'm sure a lot of you are at universities, training programs where it's a blend of the natural sciences, the clinical sciences, and the social sciences. And we're coming together more and more, even though there's turf wars and people yell and scream when you're trying to take credits away or whatever. It's a battle, no doubt, but I'm seeing a lot of good connectivity. Well, I'll conclude with a few things about some other things I'd like to challenge you with. We're familiar with Don Berwick's triple aim of healthcare, and the argument goes, you can improve population health, you can enhance the care experience, and you can reduce costs simultaneously. You don't have to do one at the expense of the other. And I think for the last 20 years or so, or 30 years, we've been learning how to do that. It's been good. However, recently, somebody wrote an article about the quadruple aim, the fourth one, improving the experience of providing care. By doing the triple aim and implementing so much, so harshly in a top-down approach, I'm going to argue that providers of care are stressed and burned out beyond measure, and that quintuple aim is very relevant. It's just not sustainable. In fact, then, we've actually introduced some perverse incentives, as I call them, over time, that are just not good for patients. They're definitely not good for people providing the care. It's just broken. Then I read in JAMA 2022, just a few months ago, they've added a fifth one. the quintuple aim. And they're talking about advancing health equity. And the definition of advancing health equity is the state in which everyone has the opportunity to attain their full health potential so that no one is disadvantaged from achieving this potential because of social position or socially determined circumstances. When I look at this list of 5 things, my friends, we have work to do. This is us. This is us. Nothing in the quintuple aim says discover more drugs. That's a given. We're doing that. But this is where the healthcare system is really at. And advancing health equity opened my eyes to saying it's not just about treating one patient at a time and trying to give them the best quality of life over their lifespan. We're talking generations of people. We're talking about communities of people. And some of you are like, I know that already. I've known this for years. Well, I'll confess, the light bulb is finally going on in my brain. I'm catching up with you. This is just amazing opportunity. And notice how many times the word social is in number 5. I mean, we have work to do. It's really great. Then I've been watching something, and I don't know if it's going to catch on or not. It was published by Helfand and colleagues back in 2014 about the healthcare system 1.0. Before 1950, it was all about, oh boy, people are dying of tuberculosis, polio, pneumonia, malaria, and all these infectious diseases. Can we get antibiotics? Can we get vaccines? Can we get antivirals to help treat these acute infectious diseases? And we're making progress. Now you hear about we're losing the battle in some sectors where there's bacteria-resistant bacteria, antibiotic-resistant bacteria, pandemics all the time. It's part of life now. It's out of control. We're still focusing on it, but not like they did before 1950, where now people are living longer, and we can do version 2.0 of the healthcare system, and that is managing chronic conditions. We've been doing this for years, and we're getting good at it. We can improve quality of life for patients over the course of their lifespan or their disease. So when you get diagnosed with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, whatever it is, we have processes of care to help you live a long life. Even HIV/AIDS, it is a manageable disease that you can live a long life, long enough to start getting other chronic conditions. And so that's what we've been doing. I don't know if I'm right on this or not, but my thinking is that when you look at the healthcare system, the word care in that phrase means health service system. We're giving as much care or services as possible. We're trying to maximize revenue by doing it as much as possible. And some would argue that system is kind of out of control and broken. So they're arguing we should go into healthcare 3.0. And this one is, it's just a health system. Is going forward, you create capacities to achieve goals, satisfy needs, and fortify reserves for the future that are in communities and are across generations. That's intriguing to me. Where I live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, we often talk about the communities within the city. And there's different needs within different communities. And how do we empower communities to maximize what they need? And not just for today, but for across generations. I have colleagues that I listen to, I learn from. I'm looking forward to listening to many of you. I'm going to be like a sponge here because this is kind of on my heart. Is this somewhere that I should be going, we should be going in our future work? And I don't know the answer. It's just on my heart right now. So let's go back to the present. This is only 4 years ago. And we have attracted these wonderful, vibrant young people. Alina's laughing. She's like, look at me. Look at me there. This is in Leuven. But in addition to the beautiful workshops or beautiful social events we go to, we have these workshops, which every time I go to a workshop, I'm astounded because the workshop organizer or leader just say, today we're talking about X, Y, Z, and then sit down and then see what happens. The tables are so vibrant. And I just love it. I just love it. So here's some pictures from last time, some workshops. And of course, we have presentations, posters, e-posters, short orals. Attend those. They're rapid, but they're really in-depth, and there's a lot of good action that happens there. So getting back to that organizational life cycle, I think we're very successful. Outward focus, we've got some structure and some tradition, and we've assimilated people. I love seeing all the, to me, young people attending this conference. This is wonderful because an organization that is going through the decline phase, which most organizations do, you have to resist that temptation. It's nothing but the older people. And I don't see that here. I don't see that here. The problem is you have a temptation to do what's called inverse priorities. You start saying, you know, it's about me. I started this group and it's about me. And, you know, we've never done it that way before and we will not change. Well, I've got news for you. Dr. Martin and I were part of the overall planning meeting. And I never heard those phrases once. In fact, just the opposite, like, well, we can't do it that way. And we have to change. And Dr. Chen and Dr. Schneider alluded to that. And it takes patience, it takes courage. But I don't hear that here. Also, I don't see decline where it's a kind of an academic country club where we're doling out perks and privileges just to ourselves. No way. We come here with great sacrifice. And we're always talking about how can we help the other, whether it's society or healthcare or our profession or our colleges and schools. I'm happy to say that at the launch of ISPW 22, I think we're going to be rebirthing because at age 50, you look in the mirror and say, well, I don't look so young, but I can still jump and portage a canoe or whatever you like to play basketball. Yeah, well, the 60s are coming, the 70s are coming, the 80s are coming. It's eventual. So like organizations, you can't maintain the status quo. So I have a challenge to everyone at the 3 different hubs. I have a challenge to you. We're at 50. We look good. We have a lot of signs of success, but we're going to be 80 before we know it. So if you could design ISPW today, how would you design it for 2020, 2070? And don't be afraid, because this group likes to listen to ideas. So those of you that are a little bit more junior in your careers, don't be afraid. Everything you say will be welcomed, and we will learn and we'll grow. Because if you don't speak up and talk, we will have inverse priorities and start the decline process. I'll leave you this. I always like inspiring quotes. Herb Brooks, an athletic coach, said, great moments are born from great opportunities. So, we have great opportunity before us. They can be turned into great moments that we'll remember and cherish forever. Lee Iacocca, an executive for a large corporation, and this is my favorite. He goes, we are continually faced with great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems. That's me. Oh, this problem's too great. I can't do anything about it. Who cares, Lee Iacocca says. It's an opportunity. So I encourage you, don't be afraid of these insoluble problems. And then Pablo Picasso said, the meaning of life is to find your gift. So I'm talking to more of the people newer in their career. You're finding your gift. You're finding out what you're good at. Celebrate that. But your work is not over, because the purpose of your life is to give it away. And there's a tradition here that when people find a gift, they immediately want to share it through a generous generosity. And so talk with people, and people will share their gifts. I must say that I have been blessed, I don't know how many times, by people sharing a gift with me at ISPW. And I don't know why people are so generous, but it's the way it's done here. It's beautiful. Now, I wouldn't be a good researcher if I didn't practice some reflexivity. Karl Popper said, history is affected by discoveries we'll make in the future. And I want to say that my historic telling of the development of ISPW is totally subjective, totally biased, based on my experiences, and it's influenced by discoveries and norms that we have in 2022. So when I look at 1980, I'm looking at it from the lens of 2020 or 2022. So I have to acknowledge that. So there might be other historical tellings. However, history can simultaneously tell us about the past, the present, and the future. Each has unique conditions. And tradition is not to be replaced. I just emphasize it's a driver of change. And the pioneers, the founders of ISPW, I believe, in my opinion, had the traditions they developed to be a driver of change. And I'm very thankful for that. And here we are, almost 50 years in. So by rebirth, it's not replacing anything. It's just looking intentionally outward to discover the new opportunities that lie before. So I leave you with this. If you could design ISPW today for 2020 to 2070, how would you design it? I have 8 minutes left, and I wanted to let anybody who's brave enough to tell a story. You can tell me that my historic rendering is totally wrong, or if you want to just ask the question of the group or give us a challenge, any hub, please jump in, and remember to unmute yourself if you want to comment.
Hello, it's from Sydney here, but we've got somebody who would like to say something. I'll hand over to Inez.
Hello, John. Nice to see you across the ether. Thank you very much for that historical rendition. I just wanted to kind of make a point. This analogy of an organization. My understanding of ISPW was that it actually isn't an organization. It's unique in a sense because it continues, but it doesn't have an organizational structure. It sort of passes from one group to the other. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about whether that is a sustainable model or whether we should be becoming a more formalized. No, well, I think we have to ask the question.
And that question does come up, that you hand off the responsibility every 2 years, and some brave person is going to say, okay, we'll do it. We'll work tirelessly for 2 years and then host it. What COVID taught us is that there's risk involved, there's benefits too. So that's a discussion we can have about, do you start formalizing it? What about the energy that you get from a host country or host? But it's very difficult. Now, I must say, I'm on the fence because I must say that the Chicago hub right here, and my understanding is it came free because we're part of the Big Ten conference, and this is why it was built. And the people here to support us are incredible. I go, you can raise enough funds, you can do this from site to site to site. So yeah, it's a very important question. Anybody want to give insight on that? Yeah, Kieran Ferris from Chicago Hub.
I think that it could be a blend of both, in that you might have an organizational structure that we pay dues to, possibly, but then you could still move the meeting around the world with the support of the national office, or the international office rather. So I think it's something that we should really critically think about, because it is a huge lift for the group that takes it on, and an international office with some financial support from all of us would help sites, but it really must continue to go around the world.
Thank you, great comment.
Hello, it's Sydney again. I would like to pass you over to Claire.
Hello, everybody. It's Claire Anderson from the UK. I ran the Oxford conference back in 2006. And when I ran it, I had people who'd run previous conferences on the organizing committee, including Tim. And I had Kath Ryan, who was going to run the following one, actually. So there was continuity, and I would hate it to be an organized structure. We have enough of those in our lives. And I think the informality of this is what makes it. I've got a new PhD student here with me who hasn't been to the conference before, and she could immediately tell that it was different and friendly and small, and we had good relationships. And I would hate to lose that in some big organizational structure. But thank you for a great talk. It was lovely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We still have 3 minutes. Oh, we have another comment here in Chicago in the back there.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me okay? Hi, this is Teresa Salgado. Can you hear me? I think this is more of a comment. I think one of the things that drew me to this conference, in addition to the friendliness and all of that, is that each university hosts it. Yes, now we're here in the Big Ten, but the tradition is that you host them in your home. So you come and you sit at the same tables where we learn from our, now professors. And so I think, and maybe I'm just old fashioned, but I think that's a truly enriching experience that I've, been able to take part on. So I like that model if possible. But yeah, so just that comment.
Great, thank you for that comment. We're at 2 minutes to the hour. It's the beginning of the conference and we have free time. In fact, here in Chicago, we're free from now until 2. So we get to talk and have coffee and so forth. In Sydney, I think it's time for you to go to bed. So we'll be on. But I will stop here and ask if Beth Martin or if anybody from the Basel Hub or the Sydney Hub, do you have any final instructions before the Chicago Hub logs off?
Just from Sydney here, we just want to say a big thank you for representing at 7 a.m. We'll be doing that tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And we really very much enjoyed your talk. So thank you very much, John.
Good afternoon and good night. Have a good day and evening.
And while we're here, let's take some time.
Oh.